But there is one great difference between the two books we are considering. The Imitation is addressed to others, the Meditations by the writer to himself. We learn nothing from the imitation of the author's own life, except insofar as he may be assumed to have practiced his own preachings. The Meditations reflect mood by mood the mind of him who wrote them. In their intimacy and frankness lies their great charm. These notes are not sermons, they are not even confessions. There is always an air of self-consciousness in confessions. In such revelations, there is always a danger of unctuousness or of vulgarity for the best of men. Augustine is not always clear of offense, and John Bunyan himself exaggerates venial peccadillos into heinous sins, but Marcus Aurelius is neither vulgar nor unctuous. He extenuates nothing, but nothing sets down in malice. He never poses before an audience. He may not be profound, he is always sincere. And it is a lofty and serene soul which is here disclosed before us. Vulgar vices seem to have no temptation for him. This is not one tied and bound with chains which he strives to break. The faults he detects in himself are often such as most men would have no eyes to see. To serve the divine spirit which is implanted within him, a man must keep himself pure from all violent passion and evil affection, from all rashness and vanity, and from all manner of discontent, either in regard of the gods or men, or as he says elsewhere, unspotted by pleasure, undaunted by pain. Unwavering courtesy and consideration are his aims. Whatsoever any man either doth or saith, thou must be good. Doth any man offend? It is against himself that he doth offend. Why should it trouble thee? The offender needs pity, not wrath. Those who must needs be corrected should be treated with tact and gentleness, and one must be always ready to learn better. The best kind of revenge is not to become like unto them. There are so many hints of offense forgiven that we may believe the notes followed sharp on the facts. Perhaps he has fallen short of his aim, and thus seeks to call his principles to mind, and to strengthen himself for the future. That these sayings are not mere talk is plain from the story of Avidius Cassius, who would have usurped his imperial throne. Thus the emperor faithfully carries out his own principle, that evil must be overcome with good, for each fault in others. Nature, says he, has given us a counteracting virtue, as for example, against the unthankful. It hath given goodness and meekness as an antidote. One so gentle towards a foe was sure to be a good friend, and indeed his pages are full of generous gratitude to those who had served him. In his first book, he sets down to account all the debts due to his kinsfolk and teachers. To his grandfather he owed his own gentle spirit, to his father shamefastness and courage. He learnt of his mother to be religious and bountiful and single-minded. Rusticus did not work in vain. If he showed his pupil that his life needed amending, Apollonius taught him simplicity, reasonableness, gratitude, a love of true liberty. So the list runs on. Every one he had dealings with seems to have given him something good, a sure proof of the goodness of his nature, which thought no evil. If his was that honest and true heart which is the Christian ideal, this is the more wonderful in that he lacked the faith which makes Christians strong. He could say, it is true, either there is a God, and then all is well, or if all things go by chance and fortune, yet mayest thou use thine own providence in those things that concern thee properly, and then art thou well, or again, we must needs grant that there is a nature that doth govern the universe. But his own part in the scheme of things is so small that he does not hope for any personal happiness beyond what a serene soul may win in this mortal life. O my soul, the time I trust will be when thou shalt be good, simple, more open and visible than that body by which it is enclosed. But this is said of the calm contentment with human lot which he hopes to attain, not of a time when the trammels of the body shall be cast off. For the rest, the world and its fame and wealth, all is vanity. The gods may perhaps have a particular care for him, but their especial care is for the universe at large. Thus much should suffice. His gods are better than the Stoic gods, who sit aloof from all human doings, untroubled and uncaring. But his personal hope is hardly stronger. On this point he says little, though there are many allusions to death as the natural end. Doubtless he expected his soul one day to be absorbed into the universal soul. Since nothing comes out of nothing, and nothing can be annihilated, his mood is one of strenuous weariness. He does his duty as a good soldier, waiting for the sound of the trumpet, which shall sound the retreat. He has not that cheerful confidence which led Socrates, through a life no less noble, to a death which was to bring him into the company of gods he had worshipped and men whom he had revered. But although Marcus Aurelius may have held intellectually that his soul was destined to be absorbed and to lose consciousness of itself, there were times when he felt, as all who would hold it must sometimes feel, how unsatisfying is such a creed. Then he gropes blindly after something less empty and vain. Thou hast taken ship, he says. Thou hast sailed. Thou art come to land. Go out, if to another life. There also shalt thou find gods who are everywhere. There is more in this than the assumption of a rival theory for argument's sake. If worldly things be but as a dream, the thought is not far off that there may be an awakening to what is real, when he speaks of death as a necessary change, and points out that nothing useful and profitable can be brought about without change. Did he perhaps think of the change in a corn of wheat, which is not quickened except it die? Nature's marvelous power of recreating out of corruption is surely not confined to bodily things. Many of his thoughts sound like far-off echoes of St. Paul, and it is strange indeed that his most Christian of emperors has nothing good to say of the Christians. To him they are only sectaries, violently and passionately set upon opposition. Profound as philosophy, these meditations certainly are not, but Marcus Aurelius was too sincere not to see the essence of such things as came within his experience. Ancient religions were for the most part concerned with outward things, do the necessary rites, and you propitiate the gods, and these rites were often trivial, sometimes violated right feeling or even morality. Even when the gods stood on the side of righteousness, they were concerned with the act more than with the intent. But Marcus Aurelius knows that what the heart is full of, the man will do, such as thy thoughts and ordinary cognitions are, he says, such will thy mind be in time, and every page of the book shows us that he knew thought was sure to issue an act. He drills his soul, as it were, in right principles, that when the time comes, it may be guided by them. To wait until the emergency is to be too late. He sees also the true essence of happiness. If happiness did consist in pleasure, how come notorious robbers, impure abominable livers, parricides, and tyrants in so large a measure to have their part of pleasures? He who had all the world's pleasures at command can write thus: a happy lot and portion is, good inclinations of the soul, good desires, good actions. By the irony of fate, this man so gentle and good, so desirous of quiet joys, and a mind free from care, was set at the head of the Roman Empire, when great dangers threatened from east and west. For several years he himself commanded his armies in chief. In camp before the Quadi, he dates the first book of his meditations, and shows how he could retire within himself amid the coarse clangor of arms. The pomps and glories which he despised were all his. What to most men is an ambition or a dream, to him was a round of weary tasks which nothing but the stern sense of duty could carry him through. And he did his work well. His wars were slow and tedious, but successful. With a statesman's wisdom, he foresaw the danger to Rome of the barbarian hordes from the north and took measures to meet it. As it was, his settlement gave 2 centuries of respite to the Roman Empire, had he fulfilled the plan of pushing the imperial frontiers to the Elbe, which seems to have been in his mind. Much more might have been accomplished, but death cut short his designs. Truly a rare opportunity was given to Marcus Aurelius of showing what the mind can do in despite of circumstances. Most peaceful of warriors, a magnificent monarch whose ideal was quiet happiness in home life, bent to obscurity yet born to greatness, the loving father of children who died young or turned out hateful. His life was one paradox, that nothing might lack. It was in camp before the face of the enemy that he passed away and went to his own place. The first book. Standing tall of my grandfather Varus, I have learned to be gentle and meek, and to refrain from all anger and passion. From the fame and memory of him that begot me, I have learned both shamefastness and manlike behavior. Of my mother, I have learned to be religious and bountiful, and to forbear not only to do but to intend any evil, to content myself with a spare diet, and to fly all such excess as is incidental to great wealth. Of my great-grandfather, both to frequent public schools and auditories, and to get me good and able teachers at home, and that I ought not to think much, if upon such occasions I were at excessive charges. 2. Of him that brought me up, not to be fondly addicted to either of the 2 great factions of the coursers in the circus, called Prasini and Veneti, nor in the amphitheater partially to favor any of the gladiators or fencers, as either the Parmulari or the secutores, moreover to endure labor, nor to need many things, when I have anything to do it myself rather than by others, not to meddle with many businesses, and not easily to admit of any slander. 3. Of Diognetus, not to busy myself about vain things, and not easily to believe those things which are commonly spoken by such as take upon them to work wonders, and by sorcerers or prestidigitators and impostors concerning the power of charms and their driving out of demons or evil spirits and the like, not to keep quells for the game, nor to be mad after such things, not to be offended with other men's liberty of speech, and to apply myself unto philosophy. Him also I must thank, that ever I heard first Bacchius, then Tandices and Marcianus, and that I did write dialogues in my youth, and that I took liking to the philosophers, little couch and skins, and such other things which by the Grecian discipline are proper to those who profess philosophy. 4. To Rusticus I am beholding, that I first entered into the conceit that my life wanted some redress and cure, and then that I did not fall into the ambition of ordinary sophists, either to write tracts concerning the common theorems, or to exhort men unto virtue and the study of philosophy by public orations, also that I never by way of ostentation did affect to show myself an active able man for any kind of bodily exercises, and that I gave over the study of rhetoric and poetry and of elegant neat language, that I did not use to walk about the house in my long robe, nor to do any such things. Moreover, I learned of him to write letters without any affectation or curiosity, such as that was, which by him was written to my mother from Sinuessa, and to be easy and ready to be reconciled, and well pleased again with them that had offended me, as soon as any of them would be content to seek unto me again, to read the diligence, not to rest satisfied with the light and superficial knowledge, nor quickly to assent to things commonly spoken of, whom also I must thank that ever I lighted upon Epictetus, his hypomnemata, or moral commentaries and common factions, which also he gave me of his own. From Apollonius, true liberty and unvariable steadfastness, and not to regard anything at all, though never so little but right and reason, and always, whether in the sharpest pains, or after the loss of a child, or in long diseases, to be still the same man, who also was a present and visible example unto me, that it was possible for the same man to be both vehement and remiss, a man not subject to be vexed and offended with the incapacity of his scholars and auditors in his lectures and expositions, and a true pattern of a man who, of all his good gifts and faculties, least esteemed in himself that his excellent skill and ability to teach and persuade others the common theorems and maxims of the Stoic philosophy. Of him also I learned how to receive favors and kindnesses, as commonly they are accounted, from friends, so that I might not become obnoxious unto them, for them, nor more yielding upon occasion than in right I ought, and yet so that I should not pass them neither, as an unsensible and unthankful man. 6. Of Sextus, mildness, and the pattern of a family governed with paternal affection, and a purpose to live according to nature, to be grave without affection, to observe carefully the several dispositions of my friends, not to be offended with idiots, nor unseasonably to set upon those that are carried with the vulgar opinions, with the theorems and tenets of philosophers, his conversation being an example of how a man might accommodate himself to all men and companies, so that though his company were sweeter and more pleasing than any flatterer's cogging and fawning, yet was it at the same time most respected and reverenced, who also had a proper happiness and faculty, rationally and methodically to find out, and set in order all necessary determinations and instructions for a man's life, a man without ever the least appearance of anger, or any other passion, able at the same time most exactly to observe the Stoic apatheia, or unpassionateness, and yet to be most tender-hearted, ever of good credit, and yet almost without any noise or rumor, very learned, and yet making little show. 7. From Alexander the grammarian, to be unreprovable myself, and not reproachfully to reprehend any man for a barbarism, or a solecism, or any false pronunciation, but dexterously by way of answer or testimony, or confirmation of the same matter, taking no notice of the word, to utter it as it should have been spoken, or by some other such close and indirect admonition, handsomely and civilly to tell him of it. 8. Of Fronto, to how much envy and fraud and hypocrisy the state of a tyrannous king is subject unto, and how they who are commonly called Eupatritus, GK, i.e., nobly born, are in some sort incapable or void of natural affection. 9. Of Alexander the Platonic, not often nor without great necessity to say, or to write to any man in a letter, I am not at leisure, nor in this manner, still to put off those duties, which we owe to our friends and acquaintances, to every one in his kind, under pretense of urgent affairs. 10. Of Catullus, not to contemn any friend's expostulation, though unjust, but to strive to reduce him to his former disposition, freely and heartily to speak well of all my masters upon any occasion, as it is reported of Domitius and Athenodotus, and to love my children with true affection. 11. For my brother Severus, to be kind and loving to all them of my house and family, by whom also I came to the knowledge of Thracia and Helvidius and Cato and Dio and Brutus. He it was also that did put me in the first conceit and desire of an equal commonwealth, administered by justice and equality, and of a kingdom wherein should be regarded nothing more than the good and welfare of the subjects. Of him also to observe a constant tenor, not interrupted, with any other cares and distractions, in the study and esteem of philosophy, to be bountiful and liberal in the largest measure, always to hope the best, and to be confident that my friends love me, in whom I moreover observed open dealing towards those whom he reproved at any time, and that his friends might without all doubt or much observation know what he would or would not, so open and plain was he. 12. From Claudius Maximus, in all things to endeavor to have power of myself, and in nothing to be carried about, to be cheerful and courageous in all sudden chances and accidents, as in sickness to love mildness and moderation and gravity, and to do my business whatsoever it be, thoroughly and without querulousness whatsoever he said. All men believed him that as he spake, so he thought, and whatsoever he did, that he did it with good intent. His manner was never to wonder at anything, never to be in haste, and yet never slow, nor to be perplexed or dejected, or at any time unseemly, or excessively to laugh, nor to be angry or suspicious, but ever ready to do good, and to forgive, and to speak truth, and all this, as one that seemed rather of himself to have been straight and right, than ever to have been rectified or redressed. Neither was there any man that ever thought himself undervalued by him, or that could find in his heart to think himself a better man than he. He would also be very pleasant and gracious. 13. In my father, I observed his meekness, his constancy, without wavering in those things which after a due examination and deliberation he had determined, how free from all vanity he carried himself in matter of honor and dignity, as they are esteemed, his laboriousness and assiduity, his readiness to hear any man that had aught to say tending to any common good, how generally and impartially he would give every man his due, his skill and knowledge when rigor or extremity, or when remissness or moderation was in season, how he did abstain from all unchaste love of youths, his moderate condescending to other men's occasions, as an ordinary man, neither absolutely requiring of his friends that they should wait upon him at his ordinary meals, nor that they should of necessity accompany him in his journeys, and that whensoever any business upon some necessary occasions was to be put off and omitted before it could be ended, he was ever found when he went about it again, the same man that he was before, his accurate examination of things and consultations and patient hearing of others. He would not hastily give over the search of the matter, as one easy to be satisfied with sudden notions and apprehensions, his care to preserve his friends, how neither at any time he would carry himself towards them with disdainful neglect, and grow weary of them, nor yet at any time be madly fond of them, his contented mind in all things, his cheerful countenance, his care to foresee things afar off, and to take order for the least, without any noise or clamor. Moreover, how all acclamations and flattery were repressed by him, how carefully he observed all things necessary to the government, and kept an account of the common expenses, and how patiently he did abide that he was reprehended by some for this his strict and rigid kind of dealing, how he was neither a superstitious worshipper of the gods, nor an ambitious pleaser of the men, or studious of popular applause, but sober in all things and everywhere, observant of that which was fitting, no affecter of novelties in those things which conduced to his ease and convenience, plenty whereof his fortune did afford him, without pride and bragging, yet with all freedom and liberty, so that as he did freely enjoy them without any anxiety or affectation, when they were present, so when absent he found no want of them. Moreover, that he was never commended by any man as either a learned acute man, or an obsequious officious man, or a fine orator, but as a ripe mature man, a perfect sound man, one that could not endure to be flattered, able to govern both himself and others. Moreover, how much he did honor all true philosophers, without upbraiding those that were not so, his sociableness, his gracious and delightful conversation, but never unto satiety, his care of his body within bounds and measure, not as one that desired to live long, or over studious of neatness and elegancy, and yet not as one that did not regard it, so that through his life, his own care, and providence, he seldom needed any inward physic, physique or outward applications, but especially how ingeniously he would yield to any that had obtained any peculiar faculty, as either eloquence, or the knowledge of the laws, or of ancient customs, or the like, and how he concurred with them, in his best care and endeavor that every one of them might in his kind, for that wherein he excelled, be regarded and esteemed, and although he did all things carefully after the ancient customs of his forefathers, yet even of this was he not desirous that man should take notice that he did imitate ancient customs? Again, how he was not easily moved and tossed up and down, but loved to be constant, both in the same places and businesses, and how after his great fits of headache he would return fresh and vigorous to his wonted affairs. Again, that secrets he neither had many nor often, and such only as concerned public matters, his discretion and moderation in exhibiting of the public sights and shows for the pleasure and pastime of the people, in public buildings, congeries, and the like, in all these things having respect unto men only as men, and to the equity of the things themselves, and not unto the glory that might follow. Never wont to use the baths at unseasonable hours, no builder, never curious or solicitous, either about his meat, or about the workmanship or color of his clothes, or about anything that belonged to external beauty. In all his conversation, far from all inhumanity, all boldness and incivility, all greediness and impetuosity, never doing anything with such earnestness and intention, that a man could say of him that he did sweat about it, but contrariwise, all things distinctly as at leisure, without trouble, orderly, soundly, and agreeably. A man might have applied that to him, which is recorded of Socrates, that he knew how to want and to enjoy those things, in the want whereof. Most men show themselves weak, and in the fruition intemperate. But to hold out firm and constant, and to keep within the compass of true moderation and sobriety in either estate, is proper to a man who hath a perfect and invincible soul, such as he showed himself in the sickness of Maximus.